The gleaming marble floors of the Regency Grand shimmered beneath Alicia Reed's worn housekeeping shoes as she navigated the bustling lobby with practiced silence. She moved like a shadow, invisible to the steady stream of well-dressed guests and polished executives whose footsteps echoed confidently around her. The soft strains of smooth jazz filled the air, weaving between the ornate pillars and crystal chandeliers that crowned the Grand Hotel's interior, a subtle tribute to Chicago's rich cultural heritage. Outside, the city's autumn chill had not yet penetrated these walls, but inside, the tension was palpable. Alicia's mind wandered briefly to the countless rejection letters stacked in a forgotten box in her small apartment, each one a silent rebuke to her aspirations. For years, her diplomas harvested from Harvard and a top university's master's program after immersive study in Beijing had lain hidden, tucked away beneath her gray uniform in the routine of daily chores. This uniform was her armor and her cage, an emblem of the invisible labor she performed every day. She thought about the way the staff meeting earlier that morning had unfolded. Gregory Lawson, the hotel's general manager, pacing with military precision, outlining preparations for the arrival of Samuel Chen, the Chinese billionaire investor whose decision could shape the future of the Regency Grand. The executives were primed for a flawless performance, a carefully choreographed dance where appearances mattered more than substance. Alicia's colleagues nodded obediently to Lawson's directive to be invisible today, to work as if by magic, to leave no trace of their presence. Invisible was the word she knew best, but it was a role that weighed heavily on her spirit. Her fingers tightened briefly around the worn handle of her cleaning cart, steadying herself against the familiar swell of frustration. Here she was, a woman fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and Japanese, with advanced degrees in international business and linguistics, pushing a cart while millions moved unseen around her. As she methodically refreshed the presidential suite, aligning Egyptian cotton sheets with near-mathematical precision and placing an imported jasmine diffuser in the corner, her thoughts drifted to the layers of invisibility that had surrounded her for years. The polished surfaces reflected a perfect image, yet the hotel's true challenges remained hidden beneath the surface. Guests whispered in Mandarin just beyond the walls, discussing business deals Alicia could understand with clarity, but none could see her. None could hear her. Back in the staff break room, Lawson's voice had dropped an octave as he emphasized the gravity of the day's events. Mr. Chen's net worth exceeds the GDP of some countries, he had said. One misstep, and we lose everything. Foyum. Yet, when his assistant timidly suggested hiring a Mandarin translator, Lawson dismissed the idea with a wave, confident the technology would bridge any gaps. Our new AI software is practically human, he'd claimed, tapping his phone with smug assurance. Alicia had listened silently, knowing better. She recalled how, 4 years ago, she'd returned from Beijing with dreams of a business career, only to be met with closed doors and unreturned calls. Temporary work at the Regency Grand had seemed a stopgap, but it had become her routine, a daily reminder of how easily talent was overlooked when cloaked in a uniform. She pushed open the door to the executive suites, the scent of fresh flowers mingling with faint traces of citrus cleaner. The hotel was a stage today, and every player knew their part, except perhaps those cast as invisible extras. As the clock inched closer to 2 o'clock, Alicia's ears caught fragments of conversation from the conference room, the sharp, clipped tones of Mandarin exchanged by Mr. Chen and his entourage. A pang of both familiarity and helplessness tightened her chest. She slipped back into the shadows, dusting a vase with a practiced hand, but hearing every word, understanding the subtle frustrations behind mistranslations and hesitations. Lawson's confidence began to falter as he fumbled with his smartphone, the translation app betraying him with absurd errors that drew stifled chuckles from the visitors' team. The tension thickened, spilling into the hallway as executives whispered urgently, searching for solutions that didn't exist. The pressure mounted like a gathering storm, and Alicia's resolve solidified. She glanced once more at the worn Mandarin English dictionary peeking from her work bag, a silent testament to nights spent alone in study and preparation. The invisible walls around her seemed to close in, but within, a quiet fire burned. She could no longer remain unseen, unheard. Today, invisibility was no longer an option. Lawson cleared his throat, voice strained but determined. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess," he suggested, hoping to regain control. Yet, in the pause, the room's energy shifted. Eyes darted, alliances reformed. The looming threat of failure hovered palpably. Alicia's thoughts raced. This moment could define everything, the precarious balance between remaining invisible and stepping into a light that could blind or burn. She breathed deeply, steadying the nerves that had been both her shield and her cage. At that precise moment, a decision crystallized within her, a silent vow to shatter the barriers that had kept her confined, to claim the dignity long denied, to speak not just for herself, but for all those rendered unseen in corridors like these. The door to the conference room cracked open, and Alicia's voice, clear, confident, and precise, cut through the thickening silence, setting in motion a reckoning years in the making. Her invisibility had ended. The conference room buzzed with stunned silence as Alicia Reed stood at the threshold, speaking in flawless Mandarin. The clarity and precision of her words sliced through the tension like a sudden thunderclap, drawing every eye. Executives froze mid-motion. Samuel Chen's stern gaze flickered with surprise, while Gregory Lawson's composure faltered, his confident smile dissolving into shock. Years of silent preparation and hidden potential coalesced in this moment. Alicia introduced herself with quiet dignity, explaining her academic journey, how she had earned a master's degree in East Asian linguistics and international business after years living in Beijing. She described the deep cross-cultural insights she possessed, the very expertise this meeting desperately needed. As she bridged the gap between the investors' complex inquiries and the hotel's offerings, a subtle transformation took hold. Samuel Chen's posture relaxed, replaced by engaged attentiveness. Notes were taken. Questions sharpened. Karen Lin's role shifted from sole translator to appreciative observer. Gregory Lawson, caught off guard, scrambled to maintain a semblance of control, but the power in the room had shifted irrevocably. "Where did the Regency Grand find you?" Chen asked directly, genuine curiosity shining through his professional veneer. Alicia's response was measured yet firm. "I have worked here for 4 years, ensuring the hotel meets its guests' expectations, but my qualifications have long been overlooked." Her words hung in the air, challenging the unspoken assumptions that had confined her to invisibility. The room's energy rippled with recognition and discomfort. A challenge had been issued not just to management, but to the entire culture that had allowed such talent to remain hidden. Gregory Lawson's face flushed as he processed the implications. He gestured vaguely at her housekeeping uniform, as if it could explain away years of oversight. I was unaware," he stammered, the weight of accountability settling heavily. Samuel Chen nodded thoughtfully. "In my organizations, talent is recognized and nurtured. Overlooking such capability is not just unfortunate, it is a competitive disadvantage." The meeting continued, but the script had changed. Alicia was no longer a silent observer, but a pivotal participant, shaping the dialogue with insights drawn from her education and lived experience. The walls that had confined her began to crack, letting in light and possibility. Yet, as the session drew to a close, the future remained uncertain. Would the Regency Grand embrace this moment as a catalyst for change, or retreat into old patterns of invisibility and neglect? Alicia's eyes met those of Lorraine Wells, the head of housekeeping, who offered a subtle but powerful nod of solidarity. This was a beginning fraught with challenges but charged with promise. The door closed behind Alicia as she quietly took her seat. Her invisibility had shattered, but the fight for true recognition was only just beginning. The quiet hum of the Regency Grand's executive conference room was now infused with a new energy, a subtle shift from the tension of earlier to something tentative but hopeful. Outside, the Chicago skyline was beginning to glow with the soft amber of the late afternoon sun, filtering through the tall glass windows and casting long shadows across the polished floors. The city's restless rhythm pulsed faintly beyond the walls, a reminder that the world outside was fast-moving, demanding, and unyielding. Inside, Alicia Reed sat poised yet alert, her presence no longer a shadow on the periphery but a force to be reckoned with. The realization that she had crossed an invisible boundary, stepping from silent labor into commanding visibility, settled around her like a quiet storm. She felt the weight of many years of unseen effort in her shoulders, but also the fragile hope that the tide might finally be turning. Gregory Lawson, the hotel's general manager, sat across from her, a mixture of defensiveness and reluctant respect flickering across his features. His fingers tapped nervously against the sleek remote control that had once symbolized his control over every detail of the hotel's image. Now, that control felt precarious. He cleared his throat, his voice carefully measured. "Ms. Reed, your insights today have been enlightening. I must admit, I underestimated the depth of talent we have within these walls." Yet behind the apology lingered an unspoken tension. How much change was he truly willing to embrace? Samuel Chen leaned forward, his dark eyes sharp but encouraging. "Recognition is only the first step," he said smoothly. "The real test is whether that recognition leads to action. We need assurances that the Regency Grand can evolve not just for this deal, but for the future." His words hung heavily in the room, a challenge that demanded more than surface-level reforms. Lorraine Wells, head of housekeeping, shifted in her seat, a quiet but unmistakable ally. She met Alicia's gaze and offered a subtle nod, a gesture that spoke volumes about solidarity and shared experience. Behind the polished exterior of the hotel, alliances were quietly forming, and the old order was being questioned. The executives began discussing next steps, with Lawson reluctantly agreeing to initiate internal reviews of staff capabilities and cultural competence. But Alicia knew that real change could not be rushed or managed with mere checklists. It required dismantling long-standing biases, changing attitudes as much as policies. Later, as the room emptied and the glow of sunset deepened into twilight, Alicia found herself alone in a modest meeting room. The silence allowed her to reflect on the complex emotions stirring within her, pride at her breakthrough, but also a cautious wariness. The years of systemic neglect, the countless moments of invisibility, and the heavy burden of expectations had not vanished overnight. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lorraine. "We're all behind you. Let's keep pushing." The simple words were a balm and a call to arms. Alicia realized that allyship was vital not just from management, but from peers willing to stand together in demanding dignity and respect. That night, in her small apartment just a few blocks from the hotel, Alicia sat by the window overlooking the restless city. The glow of streetlights mingled with the fading stars, a quiet reminder that beneath the vast expanse of sky, countless stories unfolded, stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. She thought about the battles ahead and the courage required to face entrenched systems that resisted change. Despite the uncertainty, a quiet determination settled within her. This was more than a job or a meeting. It was a movement toward justice. Alicia vowed to be both a voice and a force for the unseen, to shine light where shadows had long reigned. Back at the hotel the next morning, conversations buzzed quietly but persistently among staff and executives alike. Lorraine shared updates on proposed talent surveys and cultural training sessions. A sense of cautious optimism mingled with the reality that the road ahead would be long and challenging. Gregory Lawson, in a rare moment of candid reflection, admitted privately to a colleague, "We've been blind to our own people. It's time to open our eyes before we lose more than just a deal." Alicia walked the familiar halls with a renewed sense of purpose. The uniform still hugged her frame, but now it felt less like a cage and more like armor forged through experience. Each step was a quiet declaration that dignity was not given. It was claimed. As she paused before the grand lobby's vast windows, watching a young maintenance worker carefully adjusting a light fixture, their eyes met briefly. In that silent exchange was an unspoken understanding, a shared recognition of hidden potential waiting to be seen. The path was uncertain, but the first stones of change had been laid. Alicia's journey from invisibility to influence was only beginning, and with every step, she reclaimed not just her own dignity, but the promise of a better, more just future for all those like her. The moment Alicia Reed spoke up in the conference room, everything had changed. The once quiet, polished space now buzzed with new energy, an energy charged by the revelation of her true identity and expertise. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow through the tall windows of the Regency Grand, illuminating the faces of executives and investors who had, until moments ago, underestimated her. Now, they listened intently as she navigated complex questions with a confidence born of years of preparation and resilience. Samuel Chen leaned forward, his gaze sharp yet respectful. He had been searching not only for a reliable business partner, but also for someone who truly understood the intricate dance of culture and commerce between East and West. Alicia's fluent Mandarin and her deep knowledge of international business were exactly what he had hoped to find, but never expected to encounter in someone dressed as housekeeping staff. Gregory Lawson, meanwhile, sat rigidly at the head of the table, his earlier confidence eroding. The carefully curated image of control he had maintained now seemed fragile against the undeniable competence Alicia displayed. He glanced at his colleagues, whose faces mirrored his own mix of surprise and begrudging respect. The power dynamics were shifting, and Lawson was feeling the weight of years of oversight crashing down around him. Alicia detailed how the hotel's current design aligned with certain cultural preferences cherished by Chinese guests, the Eastern exposure of premium suites, the emphasis on water features in public spaces, yet also pointed out glaring gaps. There were no dedicated tea service areas, and the hotel's digital payment systems did not accommodate platforms like WeChat Pay or Alipay, critical for many international travelers. She spoke calmly but firmly, weaving her insights into the presentation with a mastery that left little room for doubt. As she concluded, Chen nodded appreciatively, sharing with his team how rare it was to encounter such nuanced understanding. The atmosphere in the room transformed from one of tension to one of collaboration. Karen Lin, Chen's assistant and translator, exchanged glances with Alicia, her initial professional reserve softening into genuine admiration. Yet, beneath the surface, the questions lingered. How had such talent remained unnoticed for so long? What did Alicia's presence say about the culture of the Regency Grand and its leadership? Chen addressed Lawson directly, his tone measured but unmistakably firm. In my experience, organizations that fail to recognize the capabilities of their own people are at a distinct disadvantage. Ms. Reed's insights have saved this meeting, and perhaps much more. His words were both commendation and challenge, a call to action. Lawson swallowed hard, the question hanging heavily in the air. He cleared his throat, attempting to regain some control. Ms. Reed currently serves in our housekeeping department, he said carefully, as if that fact alone could explain away years of oversight. His voice betrayed the internal conflict, the embarrassment of ignorance, the fear of change, and the fragile grasp on authority. Alicia met his gaze steadily. "It is honest work," she replied simply, "and it has sustained me while I sought opportunities aligned with my education. But talent deserves recognition beyond titles and uniforms." The room fell into a contemplative silence. The corporate veneer had cracked, revealing the human truths beneath. In that silence, Lorraine Wells, head of housekeeping, stepped quietly forward. She spoke softly, but with conviction, acknowledging that Alicia's journey was emblematic of a broader failure, a failure to see employees as whole individuals with hidden strengths. As the meeting drew to a close, Chen extended his business card to Alicia with traditional respect. The black card with gold embossing symbolized more than an invitation. It was a bridge to new possibilities. Alicia accepted it with grace, aware that this gesture marked not just a personal milestone, but the opening of a door for many others. Outside the room, the hotel's halls felt different. The polished floors echoed not just footsteps, but the promise of change. Alicia walked with a new sense of purpose, her uniform no longer a symbol of invisibility, but a mantle she wore with dignity. Yet, as she stepped into the quiet evening, thoughts swirled. The road ahead would be challenging. Recognition was but the first step. Transforming a deeply ingrained culture required persistence, courage, and allies willing to confront uncomfortable truths. She paused by a window overlooking the city's shimmering lights, the pulse of Chicago vibrant and unyielding beneath her. A young maintenance worker passed by, his eyes meeting hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement of shared experience and hope. Alicia's voice echoed in her mind, steady and clear. Dignity is not given, it is claimed. It is, and now she was ready to claim hers, not just for herself, but for all who had been unseen too long. The Regency Grand Hotel had survived the day's test, but its transformation was just beginning. The conference room felt unusually charged the next morning. The golden light of dawn filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table where Alicia Reed and Gregory Lawson sat facing each other. The air between them was thick with unspoken words and the weight of the previous day's revelations. Outside, the city of Chicago was awakening bustling streets, distant honks, and the hum of morning commuters, while inside this quiet room, a different kind of awakening was underway. Alicia's calm demeanor belied the storm she carried within. The years of invisible labor, the hidden degrees, the linguistic fluency all had culminated in a fragile breakthrough. Yet this breakthrough was but a beginning, and the price of visibility was often steep. Gregory Lawson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the rigid posture of a man grappling with the realization that the systems he'd upheld were flawed at their core. "I want to understand how this happened," Lawson began, voice low but edged with tension. "How did someone with your qualifications remain so overlooked for so long?" His question was less about curiosity and more an admission of failure, a question born from a place of discomfort. Alicia met his gaze steadily. "It's a story you've heard many times," she replied quietly. "Talent is often hidden behind uniforms and job titles, and systemic biases make it easy to overlook those who don't fit traditional expectations. Her words were measured, her tone firm yet patient, refusing to be diminished. Lorraine Wells stood nearby, folding and unfolding her hands with quiet resolve. As head of housekeeping, she had witnessed Alicia's dedication firsthand, but had never imagined the full extent of her capabilities. Now, witnessing this dialogue, Lorraine found herself compelled to advocate not only for Alicia, but for others whose potential had been silently stifled. "We've been operating under assumptions," Lorraine added gently, "that certain roles define people's capacities. It's time to challenge those assumptions, starting here and now." The room grew still, absorbing the weight of that statement. An HR representative, called in for this pivotal meeting, nodded in agreement. Together they began outlining initial steps, a staff talent survey, cultural competency training, and a review of promotion policies. As the conversation deepened, Alicia shared stories of her personal journey, the countless job applications rejected, the sacrifices made to repay student loans, and the quiet resilience that had kept her going. She spoke of nights spent poring over textbooks while others slept, of the loneliness that accompanied ambition cloaked in invisibility. Lawson listened, the defenses in his posture softening. "We need to do better," he acknowledged. "Not just for you, but for the whole team. This hotel can't thrive if we ignore the people who keep it running." Despite this moment of recognition, Alicia knew words alone would not undo years of neglect. Change required deliberate action and steadfast commitment. She resolved to help craft programs that identified hidden talents and provided clear pathways for advancement. Later that evening, in the quiet of her modest apartment a few blocks from the hotel, Alicia sat by the window watching the city lights flicker. A message from Lorraine popped up on her phone. "The survey's approved. We're moving forward. Thanks for being the catalyst." A quiet smile touched Alicia's lips. The journey ahead was daunting, but the first stones had been laid. Back at the Regency Grand, a subtle shift was underway. The polished veneer of tradition was yielding, however reluctantly, to the pulse of progress. Conversations about equity and recognition echoed quietly in staff rooms and executive offices alike. Gregory Lawson, once so confident in control, now found himself confronting uncomfortable truths and embracing a role he had long resisted the role of an ally. In this space between past neglect and future promise, Alicia found new strength. Her dignity was no longer confined to silence, but spoken boldly in the language of change. As the hotel prepared for a new day, Alicia paused at the lobby entrance, noticing a young bellhop adjusting his cap with a nervous smile. Their eyes met a moment of shared understanding and unspoken encouragement. The path ahead remained uncertain, but with every step, the invisible became visible, and the unheard found voice. The hotel was quiet now, its polished halls bathed in the soft glow of evening light filtering through the towering windows. The grand lobby, usually bustling with guests and activity, felt almost serene, an uneasy calm that belied the undercurrents shifting beneath the surface. Alicia Reed stood alone near the ornate staircase, her uniform pressed and neat, yet no longer a symbol of invisibility, but a shield of resilience. The events of the past days weighed heavily on her. She reflected on the earlier meeting with Gregory Lawson, the hotel's general manager, and the fragile promise he had offered a new role, a chance to step beyond housekeeping into the realm her education and skills deserved. Yet Alicia knew all too well that titles could be empty without real change. Lawson's office door opened quietly, and Lorraine Wells entered, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. "Alicia," she said softly, "we need to talk." They moved to a small conference room, the walls lined with framed photographs of the hotel's storied past. Here, away from prying eyes, Alicia voiced the frustrations that had been building inside her for years, the countless nights spent balancing ambition with the realities of systemic neglect, the whispered doubts about her place, and the resilience required to endure. Lorraine listened intently, her eyes reflecting empathy and resolve. "You shouldn't have had to fight this hard just to be seen," she admitted, "and I want to help make sure others don't have to." Their conversation was interrupted briefly as an HR representative arrived, carrying documents outlining preliminary plans for a Hidden Talents initiative. The proposal aimed to survey staff across all departments, identify untapped skills and qualifications, and develop pathways for professional growth. It was a start, but Alicia knew it was just that, a beginning. Later, Alicia found herself alone in the quiet of her apartment, a humble space adorned with reminders of her journey. Worn textbooks, a faded scholarship certificate, and photos from her years studying abroad. She thought about the sacrifices, late nights, missed celebrations, mounting student loans, and the invisible chains that had bound her. Her phone chimed a message from Lorraine confirming the company's tentative commitment to the new initiative. Alicia's heart stirred with cautious hope. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but at last there was momentum. Back at the hotel, Gregory Lawson sat in his office, staring at a framed photo of the Regency Grand's early days. He thought about the conversations he had avoided, the blind spots that had cost his team dearly, and the opportunity before him to redefine leadership. He resolved to support Alicia, not just as a token gesture, but as a genuine commitment to change. As the evening deepened, the hotel's staff gathered quietly in break rooms and corridors, whispers of possibility weaving through the ranks. For many, Alicia's story was a beacon proof that dignity could be reclaimed, and that hidden talents could be revealed. Alicia returned to the lobby, her footsteps echoing with renewed purpose. She paused near a young engineer adjusting the lighting, a bright, eager face she had noticed during the recent staff meetings. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. In this moment, Alicia realized that the battle was no longer hers alone. It was a collective journey toward recognition, respect, and justice. The Regency Grand stood poised on the brink of transformation, its future shaped not only by its towering facade, but by the dignity of those who sustained it from within. The morning sun poured through the towering windows of the Regency Grand Hotel's renovated executive floor, casting a warm, hopeful glow on the faces gathered in the spacious conference room. For the first time in years, the room was filled not just with the hotel's leadership team, but with staff from every department: housekeeping, maintenance, food service, front desk, and concierge, each dressed in their familiar uniforms, yet united by a new purpose. Alicia Reed stood at the front, her posture confident, her voice steady as she addressed the group. The Hidden Talents initiative, once just an idea born from necessity, was now a living reality. Behind her, a large screen displayed the survey results collected over the past month. 40% of employees spoke at least one language beyond English, 65% held degrees or certifications unrelated to their current roles, and 78% possessed specialized skills that had never been tapped. The numbers told a story of potential waiting to be unlocked. As Alicia spoke about recognizing the whole person behind every position, the room listened attentively. Her words resonated deeply, especially with those who had long felt their capabilities were confined to narrow job descriptions. She shared stories of colleagues whose talents had been discovered and celebrated, engineers who once pushed carts, chefs with unexpected culinary diplomas, multilingual front desk staff whose skills now bridged cultural divides. Gregory Lawson stood quietly at the back, a humble witness to the transformation he had once resisted. His earlier defensiveness had given way to genuine support, and now he was among the initiative's strongest advocates. The journey from denial to acceptance had not been easy, but the tangible progress offered a glimpse of what was possible when courage met commitment. The afternoon unfolded with presentations, discussions, and moments of recognition. Alicia introduced newly promoted staff members who had stepped into roles better suited to their expertise, highlighting the importance of opportunity paired with dignity. Questions arose about sustaining momentum, addressing systemic barriers, and ensuring that inclusion became part of the hotel's core values rather than a fleeting trend. Later, Alicia welcomed a delegation of business travelers from Shanghai. Her Mandarin flowed effortlessly as she explained the hotel's new amenities: dedicated tea service areas, integrated digital payment platforms compatible with WeChat Pay and Alipay, and culturally attuned guest experiences. The guests responded warmly, impressed not only by the services, but by the evident respect and understanding that underpinned them. As the day wound down, Alicia found herself walking through the familiar corridors, with a sense of fulfillment tinged with reflection. Near the lighting fixture she had noticed weeks before, the young maintenance worker adjusted the last bulb, pausing to exchange a smile with her, a silent acknowledgement of shared hope and new beginnings. In her office, Alicia's desk displayed two framed symbols of her journey: her master's degree from a prestigious university and a letter of intent from Samuel Chen's investment group confirming the Regency Grand as part of their portfolio. The weight of years spent in the shadows lifted, replaced by the vertigo of sudden recognition and the responsibilities it entailed. As evening settled over Chicago, the hotel's grand lobby echoed not with footsteps of the unseen, but with the confident strides of those who had reclaimed their dignity. Alicia looked out over the city skyline, the lights twinkling like promises waiting to be fulfilled. Her journey was far from over, but the story was now one of resilience, justice, and transformation, a testament to the power of seeing, believing, and honoring the hidden brilliance within us all. The story of Alicia Reed is not merely a tale of one woman's journey. It is a mirror held up to a society still grappling with the unseen walls built by prejudice, bias, and indifference. At the heart of her story lies a truth many know, but few confront: that dignity is often denied not by overt cruelty alone, but by the quiet systems and policies that render talent invisible and voices unheard. Alicia's journey began in the shadows, where her brilliance was cloaked beneath a uniform, where her skills were dismissed as irrelevant, and where the world moved around her as if she were a ghost. Her quiet strength, the resilience to endure years of invisibility, the courage to keep pushing against closed doors, and the wisdom to recognize when silence was no longer an option, became the fulcrum upon which change turned. Alicia's story reminds us that confronting injustice is rarely a blaze of public spectacle. Often it is a steady, unwavering flame burning through the cracks of systemic neglect. It is the act of speaking truth to power when the world expects silence, of standing tall when being unseen is the norm. The initial injustice she faced was not a sudden blow, but a slow, grinding erasure of potential. A failure by those in power to see beyond surface roles and to recognize the full humanity and capacity of the individuals they employ. Gregory Lawson, the hotel's general manager, embodied this blindness, not necessarily out of malice, but through a system that rewarded appearances over authenticity and maintained hierarchies that left the most talented on the margins. Yet it was not only Alicia's strength that transformed the story. The role of allies Lorraine Wells, who chose empathy over indifference, and Samuel Chen, whose expectations demanded more than superficial compliance, highlighted the profound impact of courage and moral choice. Allies do not merely support, they amplify, protect, and demand accountability. Their actions create ripples that unsettle entrenched systems and open space for the unseen to emerge. As the story unfolded, it revealed a powerful moral lesson. Policies alone cannot produce justice. A policy that ignores human dignity is a hollow shell. True transformation arises when organizations commit not only to formal change, but to a culture that honors the whole person, recognizing the diverse talents, experiences, and aspirations that exist beyond job titles and uniforms. This commitment requires humility to acknowledge past failings and courage to forge new paths. The cathartic resolution of Alicia's promotion and the launch of the Hidden Talents Initiative symbolize more than personal victory. They represent a collective awakening to the richness lying dormant in those who have been sidelined. They remind us that equity is not charity, but necessity essential for organizational vitality, social cohesion, and justice. Yet, the story also serves as a cautionary tale. Change is fragile and ongoing. The hotel's transformation was not an instant miracle, but a process sometimes slow, sometimes contested, always requiring vigilance. Alicia's journey is a beacon for all who face similar invisibility, and for those who hold power to choose differently. Her story invites us to reflect on our own communities, workplaces, and families. How many Alicias remain unseen in plain sight? How many talents are squandered because we fail to look beyond assumptions and biases? What courage will it take for each of us to recognize and champion the dignity in others and in ourselves? The philosophy remains clear. Dignity is not bestowed by status or title, but is an inherent right. It is preserved and honored when individuals and institutions choose to see, listen, and uplift. The courage to confront prejudice, whether loud or silent, is the foundation upon which justice stands. If this story resonates with you, if it awakens a call to recognize the unseen, then please let your voice be heard. Join our community. If you believe in justice, dignity, and the power of quiet resilience, leave us a comment with the number 1. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories that illuminate the human spirit and challenge the systems that bind it. Together, we document not just change, but the courage that makes change possible. At Beat Stories, every untold story finds its voice, because everyone deserves to be seen.